All right. So in the previous session, we have seen the basics of database, like what is database, what is SQL, and also we have seen how to install MySQL database software on Windows operating system. And also have shown you there are two types of clients. One is a GUI client and other one is a command line interface. So we can execute our SQL commands in both the clients. So every database is having the two kinds of clients. Some of them are command line interfaces and some of them are GUI clients. So from today exactly we are going to discuss about SQL commands. Okay. Now let me just open my GUI client. So most of in the coming sessions also I'm going to use GUI client. So that is SQL MySQL Workbench. So that is a default client which will be installed along with the MySQL software. So if you just go for the search and here if you say Workbench, so MySQL Workbench 8.0. So this is a GUI client will be installed along with the software. Okay. All right. So in the search window, we need to just search for Workbench. So MySQL Workbench. So this is a basically GUI tool or GUI client which is installed along with the MySQL software. Okay, that we are going to use it. So once you open this, just click on this one. So it will open the GUI client. So let's wait for a few seconds. Yeah. So now it is open the GUI client. This is MySQL Workbench. So now I'm going to use this particular tool to execute all my commands. Okay. All right. So this is your MySQL Workbench. So this is our GUI client, right? So once you open the GUI client, we need to first establish the connection to the database. So once we have installed MySQL database, it will come along with the server as well as client. Now currently my database server as well as client are installed on my same system or my local system. Okay. So here I already created one connection. This MySQL Windows connection I already created. So suppose if you want to create a new connection, first time when you open your MySQL Workbench, it will ask you to create a connection, right? So for that, what we need to do is we need to go to database, and here you can see one option, connect to database. So once you click on this, it will ask you the connection details. So every database is having some connection details. So by using those connection details, we can connect to the database, whether it can be local system or it can be reside in the remote systems. That doesn't matter. Only we need a connection details. So here we need to give some connection name and a port number where exactly our database is present or installed. And this is a default port number of database. So every database will run on a port number. So this is our default port number. And this is a username and password, username by default populated here. And this username we have configured at the time of installation of MySQL, right? So we need to click on the store in vault, and it will automatically get the password, and then click on OK. So once you provided these details, so once you click on the OK button, then it will create a new connection here. So this will show you here. I have currently two connections are available. So this is a connection I have created. So once you click on this one, and it will connect it to your local MySQL database. So this is a UI you can see. And this UI can be seen in multiple ways. So for example, by default, when you open, so you don't get all these things. So you will get this administration options. And sometimes you will get a different kind of windows like this. Okay, we don't need all these particular windows. So we need only specific windows to view the results and to execute your queries. So what we can do is we can just go to the schemas. Here you can see the option called schemas. So this one. So we need to click on this one. So once you click on the schema, so then it will show you what are all schemas or currently databases available in MySQL. Okay. So here I'm just clicking on the schemas. Now it is showing the currently whatever schemas are available in my database. So here we need to understand one important term is database and schema. So let me just clarify what is the database and schema. So what is a database and schema? So basically the database is a whole part, like it contains a lot of schemas. So database contains a lot of objects like table, view, store procedures, and lot of objects will have. So every object like table or view or whatever is having some kind of schema. So basically schema is some portion like a folder structure. So normally, if you have multiple types of files, we will create a folders and we'll keep, or we can copy the similar kind of files into one folder, right? Similarly, database also internally maintain the schemas. So schema is, we can say simply a subfolder. And inside the schema also we can store the database objects like tables, views, and all those things. And sometimes in the some softwares like MySQL, especially schema is also considered as a database. So some softwares, some applications, schema is also considered as a database. But when you go for Oracle software, so there we also have a schema, but there we generally refer the table structure is a schema. And if you go for MySQL server, so there also we have a schema concept. Okay, but in MySQL also, normally we call refer database as schema is the same in MySQL, right? So database as well as schema will be considered as the same. So here, if you go to this particular MySQL Workbench, and these are the different schemas, we can also call them as different databases. Okay, so by default, once we have installed, you will get default databases for samples like World, Sys, Sakila. So these are the 3 databases by default you will get it. Okay, and the rest of the 2 databases I have created or I have imported. So like HR database, MyFlixDB. So these databases I have imported from external sources. So these databases are required for practicing purpose, okay, for demoing purpose. So that's the reason I have installed them. So I will show you today so how to import all these databases for practice, all these things. Fine. So this is basically MySQL Workbench. So we have just connected to the MySQL connection and we have seen different type of databases here. Now let's go to HR database, and if you go to the tables, here you can see different type of tables like countries, departments, employees, job history, jobs, locations, and regions, right? So these are the called as the tables. Now by default, you don't see the query window like this, guys. So we need to have query window here to execute our queries. So here, if you see the small icon at the right side, so this will this particular will give you this one. So if you click on this, it will open up the query editor where we can execute all our SQL commands. Okay, so I'm just clicking on this, then it will open the query editor like this. So here we need to write all the SQL commands, and there are other windows also there. So this window will give you little information about all these objects. We need to select the schema here, and here we can see the output. Okay, so one second. So here, this is the output. Here we can see the output, and these are all the different tables are available, and HR is my database name. And here we need to write the query. So all the queries we need to execute from here. And as soon as write your query, you have to use this particular option to execute your query. Okay. And the other windows will be displayed like SQL add-ons and other stuff. We don't require all these things. And if you want to just close them, unnecessary windows, so it is occupying some space. So we can just select these views. So there are 3 views are there, right? So if you click on this, so this will go on. Now if I again get back, again click on this, it will show you schemas. And again, if you click on the bottom, the middle one, so the middle one is gone. And if you click on the right side, and the right side window also gone. So we need only these 2 windows, guys. So once you have executed query, it will also display the result in the bottom of the screen. So we need only schemas window and query editor. And at the bottom, you will get the output once you have executed your query. So these are the only windows we need here. So other things I have just closed. Okay. Now, so this is basically UI of MySQL Workbench. So now I'm going to use the same UI. So in our series of sessions, now we'll see how we can do this different type of commands and how we can execute all these things. Okay. Suppose a simple, I'll show you first a simple table. I have employees table, right? If I want to get the data from employees table here, so in which database my employees table is here, my employees table is present inside the HR database. So the first command I need to give is use HR and semicolon. So every line is ended with the semicolon. So, but this is not mandatory in MySQL, but in Oracle it is mandatory. Even in the SQL Server also mandatory, but in MySQL, the semicolon of the end of the line is not mandatory. Okay, and even if you don't specify the semicolon, your query will execute successfully. But normally, I suggest you guys put semicolon because that will be give you the clarity. Like if you have n number of queries, so where the query started, where query is ended, you can clearly see by using semicolon. And first we need to specify the database name, on which schema or which database we are executing the query. And then we need to write the statement like this. Suppose I have an employees table here. I want to see the data what is there inside the employees table. So we have to write command like this. If you don't know anything, don't worry, we are going to discuss all these things. First I'll show you very initial, very basic query to understand how we can retrieve the data from the table. So I'll say select a star from employees. So first we need to execute your database and select this execute, and then execute this particular query. So this will give you data like this. So here data is displayed. So this data is coming from employees table. Okay, so if you want to limit the rows, we can also limit. Suppose I want to get only 10 rows or 50 rows, we can also remove. Suppose I want to get only 10 rows, then execute this queries again, so it will give you only 10 rows. Okay, so this is your schemas, all the databases, tables, everything we can see here. And this is the area where we can execute our SQL commands, and it's a bottom area where we can see the result of that particular query. Okay, so these are the three panes we have in this particular window. So now let us start discussing SQL commands. Okay, let me share a presentation, just a moment. All right, so now we are going to start MySQL. Okay, so we already installed MySQL, and we also have ready with the SQL Workbench. So basically SQL is a language, structured query language. So the SQL is divided into again multiple subcategories like DDL, DML, DRL or DQL, and we can also call as a DCL, right, or TCL and DCL. So these are the different sub languages created under SQL. So again, every sub language contains number of commands. Every sub language contains a number of commands. All right. So SQL language is divided into multiple sub languages: DDL, DML, DRL, TCL, and DCL. So DDL means data definition language. DML means data manipulation language. DRL means data retrieval language, and DQL also called as a DQL, data query language. And TCL is a transaction control language, and DCL is nothing but data control language. So every category is having a number of commands. There's a certain number of commands in each and every category, but everybody will not use all those commands. So because in database also there are different roles are there, like administrator will be there, and developer, database administrator, database developer will be there. Okay, database operator, data designers are there. So there are multiple people who are working on databases. So they don't need all the commands. They should know certain commands, what is the area they are exactly working on. Suppose people are working on as an administrator, they should more focusing on DCL commands, data control language, because DCL contains all administrator commands, giving the permission, getting back the permission, security related stuff. So those people will mainly maintain the database. Okay, they need to know more about the data control language commands. And database designers will be there. So that's another kind of designation. So database designers basically design the tables, establish the relationship with the tables. All these things will be taken care of. So for them, DDL commands will be very, very useful. So DDL commands, sometimes DML also very useful. And suppose database developers will be there. So they will develop certain number of programs to send the request, get the responses from the tables. So for them, rest of the commands will be required. DML, DRL, TCL, transaction control. So these commands will be very, very useful. So in our sessions, I'm going to show you all the commands. So we are going to discuss all the commands. Don't worry. But in the real time, in real environment, so people don't use all the commands. So some people, based upon their role and designation and based on their requirement, they will focus on certain number of commands. Okay. Now, what are all the different commands are available? So learning SQL means just learning these commands. If you know how to use all these commands, that is enough. Okay. So under DDL, we have 5 different commands like create, alter, drop, truncate, rename. So these are the basically commands which are comes under data definition language. So why we call them as a data definition language? Because when you see these commands, create, alter, drop, truncate, and rename. So these commands will basically work on the definition side. Like if you want to create a table, or if you want to modify the table, or if you want to drop the table, these are all definitions. So we can call them as a data definition language commands. So the next one is DML, data manipulation language. So data manipulation, the name itself says data manipulation. So these commands will not work on the definition side. So these commands will work on the data which is there in the tables. So we can insert the data, we can update the data, we can delete the data. So we need to perform these actions. So we need to more focus on DML operation. That's the most important thing. Okay, as a developer as well as tester, the DML operations are very, very important. Now the next one is a DRL. Select command is basically select the data from the database based upon, we can apply certain number of commands, filters, all those things. And select is also very, very important command. So we are going to see a lot of combinations with select command. We are also going to learn a lot of other commands with the select command. Subqueries, join, set commands, everything will be used along with the select command. Okay, select command is a very larger one, so we need to discuss a lot of things on this. And then TCL commands. And under TCL, we have 3 commands: commit, rollback, and save point. Suppose as soon as I have done some transaction, or suppose I have done insert and update or delete. As soon as I have done some action, it will not automatically committed into the database. So we need to commit that transaction. And suppose I already sometime committed, I need to go back. Suppose by mistake I have done something wrong in the database, I need to again roll back that change. How we can do that? So we need a command. So rollback will do that. And save point is also there. So save point is just like a bookmark. Okay, so these 3 are comes under the transactional control language: commit, rollback, and save point. So we are also going to discuss these commands in our sessions. Next, finally, data control language. And these commands basically used by only administrators. So because database is used by multiple people, some of them are administrators, some of them are developers, some of them are designers, a lot of people will use. So, and also they don't access everything. Some people will access some databases, some tables, and some other people can do administration tasks. Some other people can create something new in the database. So based upon their activities, the database administrator will provide the access to them. So the database administrator don't provide the full access to the users, database users. So based upon their role and designation and their work, they will decide which role have to send to that particular user. So only that particular role they will grant. And if they want to get back, or if they want to take back the role, they will give the revoke command. So by using these 2 commands, they will control the permissions. So these are basically administration commands. So overall in SQL, we have these many command base. So DDL, DML, DRL or DQL, TCL, and DCL. Okay. So in another 2 to 3 sessions, we are going to discuss all these commands with the different type of examples. Okay. Now, so first thing, so as soon as we have entered into the database, the first and most important item is a database and table. These are the very basic entities in the database, guys. Okay. In the database, once we have started your working on database, the first thing is we need to work with the database and table. So these are very basic entities in the database, and database contains a number of tables. So table is one of the object in database. So we have a views, indexes, synonyms. There are so many types of objects will be there. So data can be stored in different ways. A table is a main source where exactly the data will be stored. Okay. So table is a main source where exactly data will be stored. So database and table. So these are the main 2 entities in the database. So first thing is we will see few different commands before going to that. So we have discussed SQL commands. So now the next one is database. So the first and most entity is a database. Until unless we have a database, we cannot create anything, right? So if you want to create a table, or if you want to create some data in a table, if you want to insert some data in the table, all these things are possible if you have only database, because database is a storage area where we can create anything. So first, the most important entity is database, and MySQL, the database is also called as a schema. So if you want to create a new database in MySQL, we have certain commands. So the command is create database, and we have to give some database name. Create database and database name. So this command will create the new database in MySQL. Suppose I want to drop my database, I want to remove my database, then I can use drop command. So drop database name. So this command will drop the database. And if you want to create the database, this is the one command, create database database name, or we can also use this command, create schema and schema name. As I said before, in MySQL, database and schema will be considered as the same. So here we can use either the first command, create database and database name, or we can use create schema and schema name. Both are same. And the dropping those things also, we can use drop database name or drop schema name. Okay, so these two commands we can use. Schema and database will be treated as same. Sometimes what happens is, when you're creating your database with some name, with the same name, there is already some databases available. So then it will throw an error. Okay, so because we cannot create multiple databases with the same name. So the database name should be unique in the MySQL. So if I suppose if I give create database name, if this database is already available, this will throw an error. So what I need to do is, before creating the database, through the command itself, I need to check if the database is not available in the database, then create it. I am intentionally saying create the database in the database with this name if the database is not already exist. So if you want to provide that, we need to give this command, create database if not exist database. So this command will create the database only if the database is already not exist in the database. Okay, if the database is already there, then it will not create any database. And suppose instead of this, if I give a normal command like this, create database name, if database is already existed in the database, then it will throw an error. So these are the different commands we have to use on creation of database, dropping the database. And if already database is available, we can also verify the database existence or not. Okay, these are the very basic commands we have to use at the database or schema level. So now I'll show you practically how we can execute these commands. Now let's go to this one. So this is our again workbench. So in this workbench, what I'm going to do is, so here I have currently some databases, right? So along with them, I will also create a new database. So with these commands, whatever commands I just now I told you, by using those commands, I will create a new database. Okay. So let me create, just a moment. Okay, so I'll put the presentation here, guys. Then it will be very clear. Okay, fine. So I'm going to use these commands to create a database. Okay, so what are those commands? Create database, a database. So let me go to your MySQL Workbench, and here, if you want to get the query editor, what we need to do is we need to click on this one. So the first icon, when you click on this, it will give you one query editor. So here I need to execute this command. The first command is create database, and this is the name of the database. So currently we don't have the database, right? MyDB, which is not there in this list. So I can execute this command. Just select this command and click on this option. So the first icon, execute the selected portion of the script. Now when I execute this, it will execute it. So once you have executed, then here refresh this one. There is a small refresh icon is there on the schemas menu. Just click on the refresh. Then you will see MyDB is created here. Okay, MyDB is created here. And if you expand this MyDB, currently we don't have any objects, tables, views, store procedure, functions. There are a lot of objects will be there. So currently we don't have anything is in this database. This is completely empty database. So create database and database name. So now we created one database. Suppose I want to create the database by using another command, create schema name. And before creating this, I want to delete this one. Suppose I want to drop my database. Then the command is drop database and database name. So this is a command. So when I execute this command, the MyDB will be gone. So now again, I'm executing this command, right click and execute. So now it is gone. Okay, so refresh, we don't see the database called MyDB. So this is how we can create a new database and we can drop the database. And the same actions also we can perform by using schema command. Create schema name and drop schema name. So let me use those commands this time. So now the same thing I'm doing by using schema command. So let's say create schema name. I'm executing now. Select and execute. So once you refresh here, you can see the same thing here. MyDB is created. And if you want to drop this again, so again execute the same command, create a schema, sorry, drop schema name. So drop schema, and schema name is mydb and semicolon. So when I execute this, it will also delete this one. So these commands are exactly the same, guys. The schema and database will be treated as same. Okay, suppose already have my database. For example, I'm creating the database called mydb again. So refresh. So I already have my database called mydb. Now, if I try to create the same again one more time, it will give you an error. See now, this is the error it will give you. So here, so can't create database mydb, database exist. So this is the error, we got it, right? So instead of this, what you can do is we can write another command, if not exist. So this keyword we can use, and this will check before executing this command. So create database if not exist. Okay, so create the database if not exist. Now when I run this again, it will not give you any error, but it will just give you one warning, because can't create database mydb, database is already existed. So this will not create any error message, but it will just give you some warning. So that's the reason. So once we have drop it, now again create a new schema or new database like this. So again, we have the same database available. So this is called as mydb. So now I have created my own database. Okay. So these are the first important commands: creation of the database or schema, and we can drop the database or drop the schema. Okay, so drop and create. So these commands again comes under the DDL, data definition language. And the same commands we can use for every database element. Even if you want to create the table or drop the table, again we use create and drop command. And if you want to create a view or drop a view, again we use create and drop command. So the whatever commands we have here, data definition language, these are the set of commands we can use it for any kind of database object. So database object means the table is one of the database object, view, index, synonym, stored procedure, function, everything is a database object. So to create those objects, to drop those objects everywhere, we can use the same commands. Okay. So this is about creation of database and schema. So once we have ready with the database, now we'll do certain things here. I'm removing, and also I'm just removing the table and window. Now currently we have a mydb, but we don't have any tables or nothing. Table is there, only trees are there, but we don't have any tables, nothing. This is an empty project, empty database. Okay. Now I will show you few important commands. The first thing is creating the table. So before going further, before going to discuss other commands, the first and very basic is how to create the table in database. So to create the table in database, we need to follow certain syntax. So the command here is create again. So always whenever you create the new thing, we have to use only create command. So the command is create table, and which object you are creating? Table we are creating. Create table, table name. Here student is my table name. And inside the bracket, we need to specify the column name, and S number is a column name, S name is a column name, and marks is a column name. Along with the column name, we need to also specify the data type of the column. So SQL provided some certain number of data types, and we need to provide the data type. S number is a number, so integer supporting the number, and S name is a string. So in the SQL, we have a varchar data type. So we can use this, and 15 is nothing but number of characters we can store. So S name should be below 15 characters, and marks is again integer number. So marks can be in 3 digits. So we need to specify the table name along with the columns, and columns the data type and size of the data. So 3 things we need to specify: column data type, and size of the data. So 3 things should be involved here. So this command will create a new table. So here I'm writing this table. So because in the UI, we have a multiple databases here, right? So if I write this command, if I execute this command directly, so our MySQL Workbench doesn't know where exactly this command should execute, because there are multiple databases are there, right? So in which database I want to execute this command. So for that reason, first we need to specify a command called use HR. So use MyDB because MyDB I created, right? So MyDB. So because this command will says use this particular DB, and whatever commands the next time executing will be executed on this particular database. So that's the reason we need to specify that. Okay, so in the UI it is required, but once this is only one time, guys. Every time you don't need to specify. For every command you don't need to specify, just for once, because currently this will currently focused on this particular database. But if you are currently working on command window, we don't require this. We can directly execute this command because by default at the command window, by default initial stage, it will ask you which DB you are going to use. So we specify the database there. So that's the reason we don't require there. Okay. So here we need to use this one. Fine. So create table student. This is a column name, data type and size of the data. Again, column name, data type and size of the data. Again, one more column name, data type, size of the data. And one more thing, guys, this is the same statement we can also write in multiple lines. Suppose I can split that into multiple lines like this. So this is a one column, this is a second column, and this is a third column, and here a semicolon. So we can also write the entire statement in multiple lines. That is also perfectly right. Okay. So now when I execute this command, select this command. First use this command, execute, and now execute this command. Once you have executed, it will create a table under MyDB. Now, once you refresh here, okay, so MyDB here, refresh here. Now, under tables, you can see the student table. So again, if you expand the student table, you can see the different things. And if you expand the columns, you can see S number, S name, and marks. And this is a UI level. Suppose if you want to see here itself as an output, what are the columns, data types, all these things available in this table, we have a one more command called describe. So describe command will describe the table, what exactly columns are available, data type, size, all these things will be displayed as an output. So describe, and table name is student. So describe student. So when I execute this command, it will give you the data about the table. So S number, S name, marks. So these are the column names are called as a field, column or field. And this is the type of the data, and there's a null, keys, default, extra, some other information also will be populated. They are a system at the time of creation of the tables. By default system, the database will add some more columns. Okay, so there are again maintaining the metadata, all these things. So the data about the data is called as a metadata. Okay, so here S number, S name, marks contains the data. What kind of data? Integer, varchar, integer. These type of data it is contained. So that's the data. So description command, describe command will basically give you the structure of the table. Okay, the schema of the table. Fine. So now we have just created one student table. So this is the first thing which we need to perform. So how to create the student table? Any table. So create table, table name, and specify the column name and data type, size, and another column data type and size, another column data type and size. We can create any number of columns like this. Okay, so now just we created one table in my database. So now the next thing is we need to insert some data in the table. So then only we can perform certain operations, right? So we can perform insertion in multiple ways. So if you want to insert the data in the database, in the table, we can use insert command, but insert command itself we can use in different flavors. So the syntax is again insert into student. So insert into is a command. Insert into student. Student is a table name, and values. Directly we can specify the values. So in the columns, in whichever way, in the whichever order the columns are maintaining in the table, in the same order we need to also pass the data. So this command will insert the table. So let me just copy this, and here I'm executing. Okay, so here I'm executing this command. So insert into student. So currently this command already executed. So every time you don't need to execute this use command, guys. Once you have executed, so currently our session is focused on the MyDB. So every time you don't need to execute this use command. Okay. So now insert into student. I'm inserting the values into student values. What are the values I'm inserting? And what are the columns are there? First S number, S name, and marks. So based on the data type of data, we have to pass the values. First value is an integer. So that I need to pass integer. Then second value is S name. So it should be string. So in databases, in SQL language, strings we need to include in the single quotations. So strings we need to include in the single quotations. So this is a string type of data and these are the marks. Again, it is a number. So now let me execute this statement. Once you have executed, so it will be inserted. So if you want to see the output, whether inserted or not, we don't know, right? So that's the reason we need to put this particular page. If you click on this middle icon, it will give you this window. So it will give you some information. See now, insert into student values. It will show you whether your command is successfully executed or not. So that's the use of this window. So in this window, in the output window, you can see what are the actions you have performed and what is the message it is affected by this command. And if there are any errors, it will clearly show here, warnings, errors, everything will be displayed in this particular table. Okay. So in the last command I have executed this one, insert into student values, 3 values have passed. So the last command is successful. So once you have done this, if you want to see the data from the student table, how we can see the data again? You have to use select command, select star from student. So star representing all the columns. Okay, select a star. Suppose if you want to get only specific column data, I specify select S number from student or select S name from student. So when I say star representing all the columns. Now currently we have only one record in the table. So when I execute this, it will give you one record here. Okay, so this will give you only one record. So this is a way of we need to do insert. And there are 2 other ways we have. Suppose what I will do is, this is another way of inserting the data. Suppose here, exactly, if you go for this particular approach, the first approach, in whichever order you have created your columns, like S number, S name and marks, in the same order, you have to pass the data. Okay, so in the same order, you need to insert the data. Suppose I don't want to insert like this. I want to insert the data in my own order. Okay, first I will send a name, then I will send mark, then I will send S number. So it is also possible. So how it is possible is insert into student, and in which order you are going to pass the data, we need to specify here. So in which order you want to pass the data, that we need to specify. So I want to pass S name first, then S number, and then marks. After that, specify the values keyword, and here in whichever order you specified, in the same order you have to pass here. But in the table, at the time of insertion in the table, that command will be take care of it, in which order the value should be assigned in the table. So this is another way of inserting the data in the database. So in the first approach, we need to exactly pass the data in the same order. In the second approach, we can specify our own order. So based upon this, we can pass the data here. So now I'm executing this one also. And after that, so my command is successful here. And then again, I'll say select star from student. So this time we will see 2 records. So 101 and 102. Okay. So these are the 2 types of insert. And there is one more insert is there. So this is all again same. And but suppose if you don't know exact value, so I have a 3 columns. One more important point here is, guys, we have a 3 columns, right? Here we pass 3 columns of data. And here also we pass 3 columns of data. But sometimes what happens is, you know the name and student name and number, but you don't know the marks, or still you want to insert the data in the table, but it will not allow you enter the data or 1 or 2 columns. If you have a 3 columns, we must enter the data in 3 columns. So that completes 1 record. So it doesn't allow us to put only S number and S number. It will not leave marks as empty. So if you want to insert the data in the table, we must pass the data for all the columns. But sometimes if we don't know exactly what is the value of the marks, then how we can do that is, we can pass null. So instead of marks place, we can just pass a null value if you don't know the value. But later, once you know the value, you can update that value. Okay, you can update the particular value in the table. So in that particular case, we need to use this approach. This is the third approach. So we have seen 3 types. This is the first one, second one, and third one. Suppose I don't know exactly what are the marks, then what I can say is insert into student values. This is my S number, student number, name of the student, and I don't know marks, so that I can just say null. So null is not an empty and not a value. This is just null is nothing but unknown. Null is nothing but unknown value. And suppose tomorrow if I know the exact marks, then I can update the table. It can replace this null value with some other value. I can do that by using update command. Okay, so there are three different flavors we have. So to insert the data in the table, the first approach is we can directly pass the data in proper order, in the same order. And the second approach is, if you want to store the data in my own order, you can specify the columns list, and in the same order we need to specify the data. And third approach is, if you don't know exactly value in the column, still you can insert the data in the table by passing null value. Okay, so these are all different types of insert statement. So now I will execute this one, last one, and after execution it is successful. Then again I will retrieve the data from the student. So now we have a 3 columns, and you can see the last column value is null. So that is unknown value. Okay, 101, 102, and 103. So this is how we need to execute insert commands, inserting the data into the table. So far we have done 3 actions, guys. One is, the first thing we have done is we have created a new database. Step 1, we created a new database. Step 1, we created a new database. And step 2, we created a new table. Created a table called student. And the third step, we have inserted the data. Inserted data into student table. So these are the very basic operations we have done. Created the database, created the table student, inside the database, and then we have inserted the data into the student table. So now we will see a few more options. So selecting the rows. If you want to select the rows from the table, how we can do that? Just now I have shown you one select command, right? So select command is used to selecting the data from the table. But we can also use select command in different ways. And we can use select command to retrieve all the data, all the rows from the table, or we can also use select command to retrieve the specific rows and specific columns of data. So select command will be used in multiple ways. So now I will show you how to use select command here. So here, now I'm shifting to another database called HR database. There we have some default tables are available, like employees, departments, okay, so countries, locations. So there are predefined tables are available. It contains a lot of data. So now I'm going to use that particular database. So that is predefined database, and you can just, I will give you one SQL file today. So you guys can import that file. Then you will get this HR database. So HR is a database by default you will import, and if you expand this HR, you will see a lot of tables, and these tables contain a lot of data. We can do a lot of operations in coming sessions. Okay. So now I'm removing this. So now what I can do is, let's move on to the next one. How to select the rows from a table. So we can select the rows from a table by using select command. So when I say select star, it will retrieve all the columns data. But if you want to retrieve the specific column data, we need to specify like this: columns, employee ID, okay, as an EMP ID, first name as a F name, salary as a sal from employees. So I will show you simple way, just a moment. So here, go to your workbench. So now I need to shift to HR database. How we can shift it? Use HR. Use HR. So first time execute this command. Okay, that will be shifted to HR database. Now we can execute all the commands as usual. Every time you no need to execute this command. Okay. And one thing here is, whenever you are using keywords like use, create, insert, so just practice these keywords, include in the uppercase letters, because MySQL is a not case sensitive language, or it will not support anything. So everything will be treated as the same. So you can write all the commands all in lowercase letters or in uppercase letters, or you can also write SQL commands, mixed cases, anything. So it will not be considered as both different. Okay, it is not case sensitive language. So you can use everything is a small case letters or uppercase letters, doesn't matter. Suppose if I use here, I have a command use command. So I have typed in the uppercase letters. If I type in the lowercase letters also, nothing wrong in this. Okay, it will be treated as the same. But the best practice is to differentiate the keywords and our own scripts. Always keywords include in the uppercase letters, and rest of them will use in the lowercase letters. So that's the standard we follow generally. Okay, that is not mandatory, but that's the standard we normally follow in your companies. Okay, so all the keywords I will put in uppercase letters. This is again standard. So use HR. So when I execute this command, currently my HR database is using now. So here I have some predefined tables already available, employees, countries, all these things. So now I need to retrieve the data from employees. So let's say select star from employees. Select the star from employees. And when I execute this command, it will give you data from the employees table. So it will retrieve all the columns, ID, first name, last name, email, and so on. Suppose I want to get only specific columns of data. Suppose I want to get employee ID, first name, last name. So then now we can get it. We can say like this, select employee ID underscore ID, comma, then first name, first underscore name, comma, and again last underscore name. So the beauty of this particular tool is, so all the columns, all the methods, all the commands, automatically it will show you here. So as soon as you're trying to write the command, okay, that's a very best option in this particular client. So these features comes from the client side. So all the clients will not behave in the same way. Okay, so this client is very, very good one, and which is come with MySQL software itself. So the next one is last name. I'll say last name, and employee ID, first name and last name, and I'll say salary. Also I'm capturing, and then salary. Okay, so this salary from employees. So this is my query. So now execute this query. So this will give you only 3 columns. So first name, employee ID, first name, and a salary. So the salary is giving something wrong here. First employee ID, first name, last name. I have not given comma here. Okay, so give some comma and then execute. So now we got the exact data. So employee ID, first name, last name, and a salary. Right. Suppose when I'm retrieving this data, it is giving by default some names, employee ID, first name, last name, and salary. Suppose at the time of displaying this data, I wanted to specify my own names to these columns. I want to give my own names to these columns. Instead of putting the original names, I want to use different names to these columns. So in that case, we can specify the aliases for those columns. We can call it as an alias. So what is alias means is, as soon as we specify some column, followed by give your own name. Okay, so what I can do is, instead of printing employee ID here, I will just print only EMP ID. So that is the alias of the column alias. We can call it as a column alias. Now, instead of putting first name, I can say only F name. This is a first name column alias. Now, instead of last name, I'll say last name. This is another alias of last name. And instead of salary, I will just say only sal. This is the alias of salary column. Now, when I execute this code, now this time you can see your own names. Instead of original names will be hiding. So now it is giving EMP ID, F name, L name, and salary. So this is also we can write like this. Select command, columns we can retrieve. So we can retrieve all the columns and also all the rows as well as specific columns and specific rows. So this is how we need to use select command. So one more important thing here is, suppose, so in the table, we have only salary column, right? At the time of presenting this data, for every salary value, I want to increase like a 5,000. So here, for every salary, I want to add 5,000 extra. So how we can do this? So simply here, we are printing anyway salary column, right? Salary plus, I'll just say 5,000 here. So now what happens is, it will print all the columns as usual, but while printing the salary column, whatever value we have already there in the salary field, it will add 5,000 to the existing value, and the new value will be displayed in the output. Okay, so currently 24,000 is there. After adding 5,000, it will become more, right? So now execute this one more time. So this time it becomes a 29,000. So this particular value which is added to every field in the salary. And I have given sal as a alias name. So this way we can just select the data from the tables by using select command. So main important thing is, if you want to select all the columns, all the rows, use star. And if you want to select all the columns, specify the columns like this. And if you don't want to project the original names of the columns in the output, then you can also specify the alias for those columns. Okay, so this is all about select command, selecting rows from the table. So now we have done selection. So created the database, created the table in student, inserted data into student table, and also we are learned how to retrieve the data. So we can say select or retrieve the data. Select or retrieve the data from a table. So these are the very basic operations we can perform these. Okay. So now we'll slowly dig into a few more topics. So now we will discuss about the SQL databases. So far we have seen just a very basic operations. So at the time of creation of the table, we need to specify the data type of column. So why we need to know the data types in SQL? Because at the time of creating the table, we need to specify the few things: column name, data type, and size of the data. So these three things we need to put inside the command. Okay. So now we need to know what are the different data types available in MySQL. So there are three categories of data types are available. Some of them are numeric data types. So those data types can store numbers, and text is another type of data type. That particular data type can store characters and strings. And date and time is another kind of data types which can hold dates and times, date and times of data. Okay, so these three are the categories of SQL data types: numeric, text, date, and time. So now we will see detail in numeric what are the different types are there. In text also there are so many things are there. In the date and time also we have it, so many data types are available. So now this is just a categorization: number data types, text data types, and date and time data types. Now we'll see one by one. So under numeric data types, these are the different set of data types. Like tiny int, numeric data types means these data types can hold only numbers. Okay, so tiny int, small int, medium int, big int, float, double, decimal. So these are the different types are available. So why these many types are available? Because the size of the data. So tiny int means it will accept only small size number, probably only one digit. And small int means maybe it is accepted 1 or 2 digits, not more than that. Medium int means little bit higher, and int is more higher. And if you have a long string like 10 digits or 15 digits, then go for big int. So first 5 types will accept only numbers without a decimal number, without a decimal. So here I mentioned the range. Within the range, this particular range, we can assign the values. Okay, within this particular range, we can assign the values into those particular variables. So this is basically internal mechanism of SQL. So first these types, these data types can hold numbers. But if you want to store a decimal numbers, then we can go for this one: float, double, or decimal. So here we have a decimal number. So before decimal, whatever part is called precision, and after decimal, whatever digits we have called as a precision. So scale and precision, guys, scale and precision. So these two parts will be there in the decimal number. So these are all number data types. So whenever you create a column, we have to specify the data type. So that time you need to decide what kind of data type is suitable for your column. But most of the times, if you go for without decimal number, if you want to store, always we need to go for integer. This is a suggestible one, but it can handle almost every kind of a number. And if you have a huge number, then go for big int. Okay. And if you have a decimal number, then go for decimal or double, because float is very smallest number it can hold. So double or decimal number can hold longer number which contains a decimal value. So these are the different numeric data types we have in SQL. Now the text data types. So in the text data type, char is there, varchar, blob, medium text, medium blob, long text, long blob. There are a lot of data types are available, guys, because these data types are exactly used in the real time in the complex data, because data is in there in the different formats, not only the text. So data will be there in the text format, number format, images, right? So images also a data. So images, or sometimes text file. Directly we can put the text files, XML files into the table. So they are different kind of data types, so different kind of data, and voice, images, audios, videos, all these things are comes under the data only, right? So how we can store that kind of data? So we have a special types are available in the database, and blobs and flops, long text, blobs. So these data types will be used to store that kind of data in the tables. And if the data is very, very huge, image file, okay, audio file, video files size is very, very huge. So normal, suppose if you have installed databases in your local system, so they cannot handle that kind of data. So in the real time, in the production environment, you have that kind of data. So in that time, they will use these kinds of data types, very advanced data types. Now the next one is date and time data type. Suppose if you want to store a date in a column in a table, then that particular column we can specify as one of these data types. So either you say date, date and time, timestamp and time. If you want to store only date in that column, specify that only date data type. And if you want to store date along with the time, then go for the date time. And if you want to store this particular format, timestamp format, go for this one. And if you want to store only time in the column, then go for time data type. So these are the data types are available to store date and time in the column. Okay. So these are the three kinds of data types, guys. One is numeric, text, date, and time. In the coming session going forward, wherever it is required, I'll use those particular data types.